Yeah, we just started this session with this really beautiful, like very spontaneous meditation of just like allowing our bodies to be the bridge between the universe or the heavens and then also earth and welcoming the ancestors into this conversation. And so I am just so honored that you're coming on here, Lobster Bird, to have this conversation because I really feel like, you know, there's been like timing issues, right? We've been like scheduling and rescheduling, and it's like, no, 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 now is the time. Now
Mm,
is the time.
mm.
So I
Now is
feel
the
like,
time.
yeah, yeah,
When we were just doing that, it just dropped in that we are just on the heels of the Lunar New Year. So happy New Year. It's the official real New Year, not the Gregorian calendar bullcrap thing. And
yes,
also the Aquarius new moon. So starting this new cycle in Aquarius, and we have Pluto in Aquarius now in this huge time of transition. And so this is actually the time. Like it's no
yes,
surprise that we landed right here, right now, because the new is being birthed. So
yes. So perfect. You can't make this shit up.
we try to write fiction, but it's better.
I would love for you, Lobsterbird, to start with what's been your path through wealth work and embodiment work, specifically like wealth embodiment.
Mm. Oh, such a good question. Because it has been a long and windy and multidimensional path uh, through wealth embodiment moving through me, and through me moving through a world in which we are not taught, and many of us are not encouraged to embody our real worth and our true potential. And so, for me, it's been a very mixed experience. So, my name is Lobsterbird. This will be like the framing for the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Is really what it's about is holding that tension of opposites, right? These seeming polarities, and that when we bring them together, just perhaps they create this transcendent third thing that is something else entirely.
Mm.
Right. And so, through the course of my lived experience, I have experienced so many sides of all these wealth coins, all these gold coins, right? My mother is an immigrant from Korea who grew up in post-war Korea, super super poor, like had to carry her brother on her back. Had no shoes to get to the well 5 miles away just so they could have water, kind of thing, like real, like truth is scenario. And so coming from that, and from her side, really like being impoverished and going through some like tremendously difficult things, and then immigrating to this country during also a hard but beautiful time. So that's like one part of my lineage, and then the other part is my father, who is an American. I call him a white dude, European, immigrated here. And so, having a certain amount of privilege, like in my life, that's afforded me. But then also, his family lines too grew up, um, you know, with not a lot of means, we shall say, working in chicken factories and doing things. And, so then through the course of my family's history, my father became an entrepreneur. He's a plumber, so he's still, like a worker in the field, but started his own business. And so because of his privilege, he was able to, and it changed the course of our family's life in a way. And then my sister and I were the first people in our entire family line, cousins and everything, to go to college and to go to university, right? And so yeah, we're the cycle breakers, kind of our little crew here. And through that journey, getting what they so-called higher education. We can talk about whether or not that's true, but that actually led to me getting a real higher education. All right, which was discovering my spiritual path and my healing path, and then becoming an entrepreneur myself, and then helping teach and guide other spiritual creatives to do that work as well. And so, I came into this field. I've always been like a little ahead of my time. I think a lot
Yes.
of your listeners probably are too. And so I came into the coaching and healing, what is now an industry, right, in 2015. So that was like 10 years ago. And the field was really different then. It was really
Yes.
different. And I had pretty immediate and large amounts of success in the very beginning because there just weren't as many people doing it. Not that I wasn't amazing at it, but I had an advantage, right? It was new
Yeah.
and people were like, wow. I was also doing things that were really radical, like bringing people on virtual pilgrimages. What is that even? Or real pilgrimages, right? And combining that with a course and experience so they can do work that frees their soul, right? I was doing things that were really radical. And so there was a real draw to that. But yeah, so
Yeah.
in those early years, I went from prior to that being an artist in New York City, so also that's a whole world of scarcity that I know you've talked a lot about, right? That's a whole archetype you have devoted to.
Right.
And I was, working in restaurants, bartending, working 8 jobs, working in the theater at night and then getting up and going to school during the day and then working in the bar. So I've like oscillated between these two different things because when I became an entrepreneur, I had all of this, like financial quote unquote success, right? I had this huge
Mm.
incoming of money and of wealth and of energy that was coming towards me that I hadn't ever experienced before. And so with that was like just it was a huge activation for me. And then in 2019, I was leading these pilgrimages around the world and I ended up in Thailand and I was working with these elephants in a small village. And I was sleeping in this little hut. It was like a little hut. It was almost like a tiny house, except it was just a little room. And it was hovering above where the elephants lived in their little, pens right outside or large pens outside. And I could hear them all night, the elephants like
Yeah.
making their noises, and they were washing over me. And these were elephants that traditionally had been used in the tourism industry, that's huge in Thailand. And so undergone this huge amount of abuse, come from like, a lot of like environments of poverty, then to
Yes.
go and make actual money, for people who are abusing them. It's like this whole corrupt system. And this little village though was so amazing because they basically decided like that they didn't want to do that anymore, that it wasn't right to the elephants and that they should have a better way of life. Like these particular, they're called mahouts, which are essentially, the caregivers of the elephants. But ironically, a lot of them aren't actually giving care, right? They're using them for their own material gain. But this particular group really did care about the elephants and wanted to do things a different way. And so they brought them back home to their home village and they have people come and visit them and stay. And so people pay, but they get to live like these amazing lives. And people pay to come like walk around with them and feed them sugarcane and bathe them in the rivers. And these elephants have the best life now,
Yes.
but it was a conscious choice to stop doing it that old abusive toxic way. And so while I was there with these elephants and they were literally giving me these transmissions, overnight with their trunks and their sounds. And then I was just being with them every day. I was walking with them. I was learning their ways of their culture. And I realized, oh my goodness, that even in these realms like healing or entrepreneurship, these things are amazing that are meant to change the world, right? And help people, and we're like help us be better and do things better together. We're under that same system, just like the tourism industry. Like when something becomes an industry, right, and it becomes about making money, like for certain people, right, in certain ways, it becomes toxic, and that I was suddenly very aware that I was operating within like a very toxic industry environment situation. And yeah, the elephant activation in me was like, I need to stop. And so basically what I did was I kind of like burned down my business. And then lo and behold, that was in 2019, in the end of 2019. And I got the soul download. I'd been traveling for about 7 years straight. And the soul download was go home and be with your family in New Jersey. And I was in India. And I was with my Buddhist teacher, and I was like, that doesn't seem like that must be a crossed line, right? I must not be hearing that correctly. The Dalai Lama is coming in 2 weeks. Can I go hang out with him? It was like, no, go to New Jersey and be with your parents. So we know what happens when you don't listen to your soul calling. So I went, and then a couple months later, COVID happened. And
Ah.
yeah, so our whole world change. Right?
Right. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, in terms of my journey, then of course everything fell apart, right? A lot of my wealth, a lot of my, like my income was coming from travel and from my business. But I purposely already had been needing to find other ways to access that,
Yes.
knowing
Yes.
that I was still a part of the problem if I wasn't doing the deep colonial work that I needed to do on my healing path, but also finding new ways and structures and systems within my business for it to be sustainable and regenerative.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And like to now, since then, so now what is it, 2025? Yeah, wow, it's 2025.
What dimension are we in?
Yeah, I understand what wealth is in a whole new way, and it's my devotion now for us all to understand that for ourselves, to really come from a soul sovereign place and what that understanding is, and to really have the tools and the skills to embody that, because actually it takes a lot of work. As a trauma informed therapist, it takes a lot of somatic work to be able to get to that point where we're not still wrapped into those habits and patterns,
Yes.
and it takes a really, really a lot of conscious work and expansion for our systems to really be able to bring in that energy, to hold that energy, and to move out into the world in new ways.
Hmm. Wow. That's a hell of a story.
That's the short story. I tried to make it short.
Yeah, but just like feeling through your story, this right, this massive expansion in your healing work and travel all around the world in pilgrimages, and then feeling that moment of like, oh, this is there, something needs to shift, and like what was existing, or the business that was existing, needed to just kind of like collapse for a moment and get rebuilt. And then, I'm guessing through the years of COVID that there was like reconfiguration process and a shifting, and your own, right, your own decolonial work around like, okay, what is wealth, and how do I experience that, and how do I want to teach that? So amazing. Yes. And
Yeah, I think, can I add one part of that?
yes.
Because it was super interesting to be like, my soul was right. I did need to come back to New Jersey with my family, because this is where I grew up. I grew up on the border of the New Jersey Pine Barrens. I'm looking at it right now, actually. So it's another full circle, because I happen to have gotten another soul download right now this month to be here. And so I'm looking at so we have these beautiful woods behind our house, which is where I grew up. I grew up like running around barefoot and free, and envisioning a better world and communing with the spirits out there. And so then, when I was here with my family during a global pandemic for I was here for 9 months. Ram Dass says, like, if you think you're spiritually enlightened, go stay with your family for a week. But I was here for 9 months during global shutdown. I was like, this is the biggest spiritual initiation of my life. And also I need to go outside because it's too much. And so I went outside a lot. And so during that time, Earth really became my teacher in a whole new way. And I started to really be able to communicate and work with the land again. And so I was doing that, in a healing capacity and in a spiritual and energetic way. But then as a result, I started to get really activated and was like, oh no, actually, we need to like be working more in harmony and collaboration with the earth. So I became permaculture certified. I started doing herbalism. My mom actually is a folk herbalist, but it's never really been talked about or acknowledged. And so I started to learn from her, and then eventually got my herbalism certification, and I started growing mushrooms and and then I made a permaculture garden in their backyard that's changed my family's life, actually, because they had a garden when we grew up. I didn't even really realize this. They had a garden in the back, and we have a massive deer issue, especially because around here it's pretty much turned into the suburbs. Like this
Yes.
little patch of land they have here is so precious because, they're like stewarding it, but back then, the deer were coming and coming, and they built, like, they tried everything, and they built this huge electric fence that was like, I don't even know, it was like 10, 12 feet tall. It was super high. And they were like, for sure, you won't be able to get in here. So they grew all these vegetables, and they had all these beautiful snow peas. And my mother said to my father, we need to harvest the snow peas. And he said, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, one more night. And
Oh,
overnight, the deer somehow got over the electric fence without getting shot and ate every single one of them. And my mom said, never again. Like, they destroyed the garden. They were like, we can't do it. So I came back here and I just started to do it. I started to restore the soil and I started to make the sacred garden spiral and I started doing my thing. And then one by one, they started to get involved. And now it's like fueling them in their life, that it's this thing that they are taking care of and they're tending to, and they're changing the environment around them. But, so for me, like, it's equally important to acknowledge, that relationship with the earth. And what I was learning during that time, we did need to be still. We did need to be listening more. And that education that I got over those few years informed also my business and my understanding of what wealth is.
yes. Wow. And you really have like you have such a knack to infuse everything you do with such magic that I don't doubt for a second that you started like working in that garden and all of a sudden like the plants are like they're here. Lobsterbird is here.
Well, and I have to tell you that my father has said to me many times, he goes, I never saw a mushroom in this yard ever until you came here. And then
Right.
you start, because I was foraging and I was growing them. And he said, and now they're everywhere all the time. And then when I come home, he goes, there haven't been any for months and they're back. So I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that more than once.
Amazing. Amazing.
But that's,
Yeah.
that's the capacity I think we all have to be like in that
Yes.
much connection that we greet each other, we grow together and we rise. I mean, the plants literally like, so I have this like jade plant. You can't see, but it's actually like poking me in the head. It's my mom's. And like this plant, as I exhale, as I'm speaking, the jade plant's like getting closer because it's bringing in the life force from my carbon dioxide that it needs, right? And then it's
Yeah.
feeding me the new life and energy. And like we all have that, and we very much can communicate with the natural world in a way where like they rise it rises to greet us if we're willing, right?
Yes,
To let it.
exactly, exactly. And now that you're talking about gardens, something that I've learned so much about wealth and abundance and receiving from gardening, right? I have this like, I work or I steward land with a group of people in New Haven, and that's been such a rewarding experience because it's like there's always more. There's always more. Even in the winter in the greenhouse, there's kale. The fig tree is asleep, but it's like it's incubating energy. And it's like, they were, when things were expensive in the supermarket, I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to go to the garden and see what's available. And there was always something to harvest, always something to eat. There was never, like, I didn't buy greens in the supermarket for forever, like for like, I don't know, 6 months or 7, because there was something I was always being provided for. And it
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, like this is the energy. This is the energy of always being provided for no matter what." It's like and it hit, right? I got it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, because this is why embodiment is so important, right? Because literally you're putting it in your body. And when you're, when you're eating the things you're getting from the garden, there's a transmission, there's an energy, there's
Yes.
a wisdom transmission, right? That comes in and we get it in a visceral, embodied, lived way, not just a, oh, I could be growing a garden, right? Thinking about it. I
Yeah,
could be
exactly.
going to the garden. Yeah. And so, for us all personally to be able to connect in that way is one of the hugest wealth transmissions, and then also kind of invert, like I'm often thinking about the infinity spiral of
Yes.
like of
Yes.
everything. On the other side of that is that, it's also up to us to understand exactly what you're saying, that nature is wildly abundant, right? It's always in symbiosis. There are always things feeding one another. So like everything is well resourced in nature, right? Because it's all part of this sharing and this rebalancing that's happening. And so when we look to nature, to replicate, or I would even say like embody that in our systems,
Mhm.
right? Then we have systems where everyone can thrive. Then we have systems where there's resource sharing, right? And we
Yes.
have, of course, like there's always going to be some level of kind of competition, right? There is a nature as well. It's not just this like idyllic utopia thing, right? There's life.
Right.
It's a
Yes.
matter of life, right?
Yeah.
That there is death and there is change and there is, competition. But in the same way, we have the systems that we live under have been so disconnected, right? And so unconcerned with the natural world that we've been suffering, needlessly at the hands of that. And so when we start to really hone in on that, when we start to understand that, like you're saying, in a very embodied way, then we can go out and we can create systems in our own life. We can create systems for our business. We can create systems for our community, right? That more mirror and embody the way that nature does it. And like moving, I think we're doing it already. I know we're doing it already. But as we move into this new world, it's like when you're in the garden or when you take a walk out in the forest, or when you
Yeah.
go to Costa Rica and you're in the rainforest or you're out at the ocean and you can breathe in the ocean air, it feels good. One feels alive. And we have this understanding that everything is interdependent and we're all okay.
Yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
what's happening, because we're in this interdependent web of care and reciprocity. And so as
Yeah.
our systems start to mirror that, we start to live that. And for me, like one of the things in my decolonial work was, like if if someone is saying they're wealthy, but we look around the world all around us and we see how all of these other people are not, then we're not truly wealthy. Right?
Yes.
Because we
Right.
are a mirror of our external world and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so, for us to be making money in our lives, for us to be cultivating wealth, right, isn't enough. We have to also have that zoomed out view, that we're doing this as part of a greater ecosystem. And as such, we need to
Mhm.
really tend to the system, right? So that
Right,
it's,
and so, like right, and this is sort of where this piece around individualism versus collectivism comes in, where you see, usually like individualism, we just see ourselves, right? We're sort of like self-focused and self-involved, but in collectivism, you really see yourself as being like, oh, I'm interconnected. Like there's an ecosystem of not only family but community and neighborhoods, and right where there is this exchange, like you talk about the symbiosis between the carbon dioxide and with the trees and nature and everything, and yeah, just feeling like that breathing of in and out between you and the community, body and land, all of those pieces. Yeah, like we are all interconnected, but you can know that on an intellectual level, but you have to really like know that in an embodied way to then live live that experience or
yeah.
practice it in order to experience it.
Exactly. And what you're pointing to, which I love, is another glorious polarity. Let's talk about it. Individualism, collectivism, right? Both of them are sides of the same gold coin, right? And so you can go too far into collectivism, right? And then it turns toxic still, it turns into things like codependency, right? And it turns into
Absolutely.
martyrship and it turns into all these things. And so there
Yes.
is this secret third thing, right? Which is when we fully understand what it means to be an individual, right? To be fully soul sovereign and like me in my own selfness and
Yes.
authenticity and all
Yes.
that is, right? And also, can I hold space for that and the collective, right? And what it means to be able to be building something that it is, geared towards the collective thriving, but one isn't sacrificed for the other, right? When we
Hmm.
can come to that liminal space, that's when we can start to just evolve, right, into this next phase of
Yes.
whatever that is. We don't know yet.
Yes, yes, that's perfect, perfectly put. And so I would love us to shift into, or for you to share, you talked about systems and collective systems, and I would love for you to share your experiences in systems of wealth that feel more regenerative or that are an alternative to what we see, for example, in capitalism. I would love for you to share your experience with those.
Mm. Yeah, so I know one other thing you and I both love, is the idea of sacred economies,
Yes.
and gift economies and like alternative economies, right? So we
Mhm.
hear these words a lot, And so let's unpack them. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? And so, after my whole Phoenix through the fire thing of 2019 till whenever that ended, several years later, I started to move out in the world again. Cause like I said, I was doing all of this really internal work, internal healing work, and then mostly working with the earth. And then I like really didn't talk to a lot of people. I was like basically in hermit mode for, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. And when I started to move out into the world again, it was a different place because a lot of people had had tremendous experiences during that time.
Yes.
And so one of the things that happened for me, I'm like, yeah, this was really the beginning. So the first alternative community that I entered into was very accidental. I tell this story in other places, so I won't go into the whole thing. But long story short is that I received an email from a company in North Carolina called Seuss of the Carolinas, which was a wilderness therapy company. And at the time, I had been really defining. So I was actually, I was doing caregiving work for my friend Lindsay, who has ALS, and I was living with her. And I was really bringing through and honing in on community, what that meant to me, what that looked like, what I wanted. And I knew several things very specifically. Like, one, I needed to be really immersed in nature, like real nature. And the other one was, like, I needed to be in a community of like-spirited people who were actively, co-creating this new thing together that I didn't know
Mm.
what it was yet, but I knew I would know when I found these people. And we did this winter solstice ceremony, and I led everyone in creating these sigils. And so my sigil was all about that. And so then I wrote down this list. Then I was like, okay, if the universe is going to send me to this community, I need to know where it is, right? And I wrote down a few places. One of them was Pisgah National Forest. I was like, that's weird. No one lives in a national forest, but okay. And then 2 days later, I got this email from Seuss that said, we're located in the heart of Pisgah National Forest. And we found you on this random queer environmental job board that I'd never heard anything from before or after ever.
Yes.
Just this one email. And they said, and we want you to come down to North Carolina and work with, challenged youth. Most of them were what I call neuroemergent, neurospicy, neurodivergent kiddos. And yeah, and I just went, basically. I went. And so this was my first time being, oh, okay, I'm in this community now. And what is this like? And we lived out in the woods for half the year with these kids, who are really, they were kids who either were like basically about to go to juvie or to go to a mental institution. Like that's when they send someone to wilderness therapy, right? It's like this is our last chance.
Yes.
So we're all out there and we're all trying to figure out how to live together. Like literally we were doing survival skills and emotional coping, work and being out in the woods. And so that was really my first time. And I learned so much from Seuss because, like I realized like, oh, wow. Okay. So first and foremost, like we're all here. Like we're literally like, we have no cell phones, right? We're here for weeks at a time, alone in the woods. Like, what do we do? And okay, well, we're learning how to really live with the earth, like in the most really like present and pressing and like important way possible. And then also we're doing the inner work, right? So we're working on ourselves inside and we're working with the earth. And through that commitment to that, right, I was witnessing these amazing transformations happening for the kids there, for the field instructors, myself included, and then I was like, oh, right, okay. So the basis of these communities, right, that we're co-creating, because let me like historically place this too, right, is that we're doing the secret third thing. So a lot of what a lot of us want to do right now is actually in the 60s and 70s, people were trying to do that then, right? People want to start eco-village and intentional communities and live together
Yes.
anyway. And then we saw what happened. That all kind of fell apart for a while. But now we're doing it through a whole new lens, through a whole new embodiment. We've learned from the wisdom of our ancestors, previous generations, mentors, etc. Right? So we're attempting to do it again. And so my first learning was like, okay, when we do the work, we need communities that are doing the work together, right? And like we talked about, the work is internal and the work is with the
Yes.
earth, right? So that was my first experience, and it was really amazing. And then that led to my next one, which in part, so I got another soul download that my time at Seuss was over. This was like a year. It was like, you're done. And I had called them and I said, I have to give my leave. And then, I think a week after that, I got a phone call and I was like, oh no, are they going to try to get me to come back? Like, why are they calling me? And they called to tell me that Seuss had closed permanently. I think it'd been around since 1981. Like, this was not a flash in the pan. It was like it's one of the oldest and most renowned wilderness therapy companies in the country, had just suddenly closed. There's this whole it's happening to a lot of them for reasons. But I
Okay.
was like, okay, so can't go back to that. Like, I had thought about it. I thought maybe I should just keep doing this. I was like, okay, that's not it. So now what next? Right. And I was praying a lot, doing my inner work. And then at the time, I was also dealing with a lot of chronic illness, which had been happening over the years, but it had started to come up more and more. Like, as I started to do this deeper healing work, that actually it was like this purification that was happening, and there was a lot of like chronic fatigue and there was migraines, right? There was like all this stuff coming up in my physical body that was also being cleared. And so, I'm praying about that, and I'm praying, and I'm also like, and I need to make money, like job, like what do we do? And this other thing fell in my lap, which was this frequency device, which I know we both have a relationship with. It's called Healy. And it's basically an interface between the quantum field and the physical world. And it can help support in any area of your life, from like physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, financial, career. Like, this little thing does everything. And I had heard about it several years ago. And when I heard about it, I was like, nope. Also, because coming from, remember, I told you, like, I came from what had become a toxic, health, personal growth, like, environment.
Yes.
I was like, oh wait, like, I'd always been anti MLMs and network marketing, and I was like, and I saw it then, and I was like, nope. It's a big no, huge no. And I'm not even going to use the thing. Like, that was several years ago. But now, as I'm praying and I'm opening, like, up to like what's next, this comes through Jana Romer, who is now a mentor, friend. Like, we work together in several ways, but she mentioned the Healy, and when she said it and she talked about it, I got this like strike of lightning through my body. And I was like, oh no, this is the next thing. And then I said to myself, okay, fine. I know I need this for my own personal healing. I accept that. I'm not ever gonna sell the thing. Like, I'm not getting involved in the business. And I started to use it. And before it even came, Isha was like experiencing all of these things, like changing in my system. And I was like, I have to talk about this. Like, I can't not talk about
Wow.
this, right? And then it turned into a thing. But the reason I mentioned that is because this was like my first activation into a new kind of community now that was doing
Mhm.
business, right?
Yes.
And community together, because coming through in Jana and watching the way that she's crafted our community and has built it, I realized, like, oh, this is amazing, actually. So we have all of these healers, we have medical practitioners, we have like teachers of all kinds. We have people from every walk of life within our Healy community. And we're all engaged in this gift economy, right? Where we're all sharing our gifts. We're like teaching each other different things, right? Like, we have meetings all the time and we're just like sharing info and wisdom and gifts. And like, if someone has an issue and they come into the group, there's like 5 people that are like, hey, I can help you, like, and we're all helping each other, right? And so it's like, we got this device originally, but what we really got was a gift economy and
Yes.
no, which then for me was so the thing itself was healing, right? And then the personal work I was doing was healing, and then healing in community. And I was like,
Yes.
okay, so now we're at next level, right? So that was my next understanding of wealth and community. And so
Yes.
then after that, I was like, and then also, let me say, so there is the business model, right? Which technically is network marketing for it.
Mhm.
But what I saw, I was like, oh, so the reason why I feel okay with this is, one, like, I mean, I'm literally just talking about the device and what it did for me, and people are like, I want that. So I'm not going to say like, no, like, I'm not going to help you access your own healing. And no, I won't receive, because like also we have a lot of education around it. It takes a lot to get someone set up with rent, right? It's a big
Yes,
investment of energy to teach someone how to use it and to keep, like to keep informed ourselves. So I was like, okay, so I'll receive. And then when I became a part of that business ecosystem, I realized, okay, here's the difference, right? Any kind of system is neutral, just like anything in this world that you encounter. Like this water is neutral, right? But this water could be poisoned, which would make it bad for us, right? Or it could be, filtered or pure, right? And good. Like everything is neutral, and it depends on how we relate to it and cultivate it, right? And
exactly.
so what I saw within that community was like, oh, okay, we can use that structure, the network marketing structure, and if it's being led with integrity, right, by the people that are upholding that structure and constantly working to negotiate and transform it and change what it means depending on people's needs, and like is really looking out for the people in the community, and not just profit for a small amount of people. The structure is fine. The structure is great. It makes so much sense.
Right? Yes, just community and this interweaving, right? Yes.
Yeah, because the reason why network marketing doesn't work historically and why they call it a pyramid scheme is because generally there's like 1% of people that actually, succeed at it. And it's geared towards, right? Just like our economy, by the way, 1% of the people, right, holding most of the wealth. But if you have a system like that's devoted to everyone having wellness, right,
Yeah.
on all levels, including financially, suddenly that system isn't so bad anymore. Actually, people can use it to all experience well, right?
Wow. Okay. I love the reframing of that and the yeah.
Yeah. So then the next one that led me into that is a community called Dream Weaving, which I can't really even talk about that much because it's a little bit of a secret society. So if anyone's interested, let me know and we could talk privately. But similarly, here we go again. Like here we have healing. It's like almost like a shamanic healing experience, right? With a group of people, and we're moving through these elements, and we are contributing our energy, which includes, somewhat financially. And we, in the end of it, right, are able to, like, we receive so much by being in this process together because the process itself is very clear, and it has a long lineage, and it's just like, yeah, it's just so it has a lot of integrity, right? That's, I think, the key word here. It has integrity in the system and the people that are upholding it. And so you go
Yes.
through this incredibly healing process, and then like there's like you end up receiving while you're in the process of it. And so now like this was mind blowing to me because I was like, oh, this is technically, like, we don't talk about it. This is a sacred economy, is what they call it, right? These are based in like sacred principles, and we're doing very sacred healing work within it, but it's also an investment strategy, right? You put your money into something and then it grows by 8 times or whatever. The thing like that. But in this, I was like, oh my gosh. But now, so for people, so there's a lot of people, right, who we know working in the financial industry who are terrified of investing, right? Don't even
Yes.
touch it with a 10-foot pole, right?
Yeah.
Because it's complicated and because there's a lot of toxicity within that system. And it's like, oh, blah. But so now let's just think about like, what if there was a system? Spoiler alert, there is. I'm talking about it right now, where instead of investing in like oil and blah blah blah, all these like gross things in the stock market, right, that you don't want to put your money in, you're investing that money in other humans, right? You're investing that in other humans for them to live their dreams. And through so doing, you receive for living your dreams. And now we're creating a culture of people that are invested in each other's dreams.
Wow.
Right. Now I was like, okay, next level. Here's what we can do, right? In community. And then moving into the final, I think, one, but it's not the final, but the last one I'll talk about for now, was coming into community with you, dear Isha, and with our crew. Of financial professionals, and that happened also somewhat accidentally. Actually it was not without Healy, right? So being in that community actually led me to other community members that led me to find you all. And through so doing, I was in this really precarious place once again. Like I said, when you asked me about my wealth experience, it's like huge amounts and then burning, crashing down, right? That was the old story. That was the old story. And I was very much purifying that old story when I met you. And I knew it, like through every single cell and fiber of my being. And so I know when we met for a financial strategy, I was like, I was like, what's going on? I was like, what's going on in that collective? And I got super, like the way I came into that was starting to learn about financial literacy,
Yeah.
and so I got this sacred rage that ignited within me because I was like, why didn't we learn this in school? Why doesn't anybody know about this? And it was just like the Healy, right? I was like, frequency can like help with every single aspect, right? From the physical to the spiritual. And I was like, financial literacy, like can help with every aspect of the physical to the spiritual, right? And I was like, I'm gonna start talking about this. So like, can I join your right? Like, what is this? Who are these people? What are they doing? And so it so happened. And now here I want to just like input, I want to bring us back to that infinite spiral, right? That
Yes.
unending spiral. Because what I realized through, being a part of our collective is that it's a trap, right? It's a spiritual trap on the path to be constantly like, okay, well, we're creating these new communities where we're investing in each other's dreams and we're co-stewarding land and we're doing all this stuff, right? As if we can get away from what is happening in the world right now, which like right now happens to be a really intense time politically. Like it's economically, right? I mean, we're like ushering in the age of Aquarius, like shit's burning to the ground, right? As I say this. And so
Yeah.
what I want to mention here, which is super important about our collective, is that yes, there's like so much healing that we do with people in their personal finances. We show them how to actually accumulate wealth in their lifetime and for like future generations to change the world with. Like, yes, all of that's happening. And what I
Absolutely.
realized is that we can't do that without participating in the old system to some extent. Right. And so I want to equate this as being people that are in the Matrix, like the movie, right?
Yeah.
Like Neo and Morpheus, and we're all these characters, right? And we have to go into the Matrix, but be able to go in with a certain level of consciousness, right? To be able to go in and like this to the bullets, right? Defy
Yeah.
the bullets that fly past us, but also still take it down from the inside out. We're never going to be able to create the world we want to see if we don't participate in this one and its downfall in the process. Because if we don't participate, right, like it can't possibly go anywhere. It just stays going, and it's got a tremendous amount of power right now. But we have the power actually to participate to the extent that it doesn't harm us and it doesn't harm others. We're going in very consciously aware and we're making decisions knowing that we're going to do it so that these systems crumble. And it's
Yeah.
only if we do that, and while doing the other things, while doing the dream weaving, while using the frequency, right, while doing all of that other work, that's the only way that we are going to see that wealth in our lives and in our ecosystem as well.
I love that you just said all this because I've been talking to other people about that, like about breaking it open from the inside. And the visual that I've had is different. I've had sort of like, like the root of a tree growing and sort of breaking up the concrete, you
Mm.
know? But the way that you described it now just felt so like the Matrix analogy just made so much sense to me and is going to make so much sense to the listener.
Yeah, because we're plugged in. Like, that
Yes,
visual where everyone's plugged in
we
the pods?
are
Like, that's
plugged
us
in.
still.
Yes.
We have to take the pill, but and we have like, so if you want to get to the telephone, right, that you need the call to get to that other place, you have to go through the weird building and be shot by the guys
Yes, exactly.
stuff. And so that means like you have to participate in the financial system, right? Like you have to put your money into something where it grows, right? All of that's going to be connected to this larger system that is very, very flawed. Like I
Yeah,
recognize that while I'm participating in it, it is super flawed, but I'm not doing it blind, right? I
yeah.
am doing it knowing that my participation is what is going to make it crumble.
Yes, yes. And then the vision that you have for what is possible is so way beyond what we see here and what we're participating in right now.
Mhm. Yeah,
Exactly.
because we're participating either way, right? But
Yeah.
when we go in and we consciously participate, that's how we get to unplug ourselves from those little egg pods and
Yes.
everybody else around us. Right? And we're well resourced. Like then as individuals and as the communities that we're co-creating together, we're well resourced to make the changes that we need to see. Right?
Mhm.
To me there's no other way. It's because to like bring it all back in, right? It's that secret third thing that we're looking for. So it takes a certain level of participating in the old thing and a certain level of participating in the new thing. And if we can strike that very delicate and tricky balance and be in that liminal space, we're going to see a new world with, I believe, within our lifetime, you know, and if
Yeah.
not, most certainly, like, you know, the generations of kids that are growing up. It's all happening very
Yes.
fast.
Absolutely. Like I keep thinking about the kids as like part of this, about like the work that we're doing now is like we're in the birthing process, and you know there are parts of the birthing process that are very messy, and some of them are like very painful. You know, and it's also a beautiful process, and the product is obviously like, you know, like amazing. But yeah, like to really understand the realness of what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you brought it back to that too, because when we first opened this up, we were talking about being this bridge, right? Between
Yes.
bringing in the heaven information, bringing in the earth, right? Like,
Yes.
we are the bridge generation, you know, like, and so
Yeah.
many of us, you know, who were born before this technological explosion, who weren't so-called digital natives, right?
Yeah.
Have this experience of what it was like to exist before that happened, you know, which has changed our entire world and is going to continue. The law of accelerated turns returns indicates, right, that technology grows at an exponential rate. Like there's going to be a
Yes.
moment where suddenly the world looks like completely different, you
Yes.
know, in overnight. And so there's a superpower, right, to understanding how to navigate within this technological landscape that we live in, you know, which is like a whole other podcast we could get into. But also understanding what it means to have existed before it was like this, you know.
Yes.
And so like we
Yes.
are this bridge, and sometimes, you know, like when you walk over a bridge, like if it's one of those bridges that's made from like ropes and it's like swinging high above the water, like it's shaky and it's
Yeah.
scary. And it might fall apart, and if it's old it might be crumbling, you know. But it's like you have to cross that bridge, you know, you at some point you have to be in the center of that, right, to
Yeah.
get from one side to the next.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for just bringing this incredible energy to this conversation. And I want to let listeners know how they can find you.
Yeah, come
Yeah,
find
how they can
me.
connect with you.
Let's co-create community together, while taking down the system. So I'm pretty easy to find. My name is Lobsterbird. I've had people that say like, I tried to Google what a lobster bird is, and you're the only thing that came up. So I have a website. It's so aptly named lobsterbird.com. You can find me there. I'm on social media. Yeah, so on some of them I had to be the lobster bird because I don't know how someone ever took lobster bird, but did. But yeah, type in lobster bird into wherever you are. And we will find each other. And yeah, I mean, this is it. Like that's my whole thing of this moment is really thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Isha. Like I think it's so important for us to be able to continue expressing in our authenticity, right? Sharing what we're learning along the way, what works and doesn't work. Like, you know, Neo couldn't just go into the matrix by himself. He needed
Mhm.
mentors. He needed a team, right? He needed people to rub and
Yes.
save him sometimes, right? We need each other. And so, yeah, I think it's so important that all of us, you know, really send out our transmission of who we are right now, what we're looking for, what world we're co-creating and building. Because like also I just want to say that right now there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of chaos, right? And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to try to take you off center and have you get
Yes.
wrapped into that old thing. And those of
Mhm.
us who want to co-create a new way, we have to find each other.
Yes,
And
exactly.
we have to actively be holding that vision together and doing the things together that are actually going to bring that new world into being. So come find me and let's do that together.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
I love you, and
Yes, I
I
love
love
you
this world we're
too.
creating together.
Yes, me too, and having being able to do this with you is like what it just is like it's just such a huge bright spot. It really like keeps me in here in such a passionate way. So thank you.
Likewise, thank
Yeah.
you.